Hi there, Robert Phoenix, broadcasting to you live from a secret remote location nestled in the hill country of Texas. I don't have my non-reflective glasses on tonight, so I have to put up with the uh, the reflective glare. What's going on, everybody? Sorry, it's taking me a little bit longer to get to the screen tonight because I've been transfixed by this World Series game where it's the home runathon, and that's the way it's been all World Series, and likely due to the fact that the balls are juiced. That can get you in trouble in some places now, depending upon who you say that to, because that's the climate of the world we're living in. We're going to cover some of that tonight on tonight's show, the live stream. Welcome to it. As always, it's been a wild and woolly week, and promises to get wilder and woolier tomorrow when James Comey makes the first of his, I guess, arrests. Is that what's coming down the pipeline for the Trump administration, or the arrests? I hope the stream is okay tonight. I'm doing it, like I said, not my normal environment where the stream quality is usually pretty good. So I apologize in advance because I do move around a little bit with the internet, and sometimes when I go from page to page, it gets a little, how should we say this? What? Latency, dropouts, all that good stuff. So, wow. We're living in a time where we can't even really catch our breath. It's on to the next thing, and on to the next thing, and on to the next thing. And we're doing our best to stay fluid and agile during these times, which is really quite important. It's like one of the most important things we can do is stay fluid and agile inside and out. And tomorrow, no doubt, there will be a maelstrom of activity blaring at you, absolutely blaring at you from the media. And there's a lot going on the Trump side, on the Comey side, on the Uranium One side. I mean, all these things have been piling up. They seem to now they now seem to be coming to some sort of a head. What kind of head, we'll see. We'll find out. It should be interesting, whatever it is that unfolds tomorrow. To be honest with you, I've been practicing just a lot of, how should I say this, loving detachment with the whole thing. But on the other hand, it's also fascinating to see both sides begin to consume themselves, which we've talked about on prior shows, and the energy for all of this is kind of it's just mind blowing. I mean, we've never seen anything like this in the political arena ever. We've got about 4 or 5 scandals all running kind of concurrently at the same time. And one of the scandals we'll be talking about tonight is the Harvey Weinstein scandal, which is ongoing and still developing. And I broke down Weinstein's chart over on my website. I have a new post up. If you haven't been over there, please check it out. And in it, I get into this interesting kind of mirror between Harvey Weinstein and Hurricane Harvey. Of course, they both share the same surname, and they both happened right around the same time. Hurricane Harvey slightly before Harvey Weinstein. Well, not slightly. We're talking about almost a month before, and then Weinstein happening right around October 13th. That's when it all started to break, and of course that aligns with the slaughter of the Knights Templar in the south of France. Now, I didn't really get into that in the piece, although it's an interesting kind of signature in time to correlate something with. We also have this event coming up in November, the first week in November. Antifa and all these other groups are supposedly going to take to the streets, and they're going to be wearing Trump gear. They're going to be wearing Trump hats. They're going to look like Trump supporters, and they're going to go after Trump supporters. So this is, I mean, that is technically kind of a false flag in a lot of ways. It's when, I mean, the whole idea of the false flag, which is what I shared with you before, is that it happens at sea or happened at sea, and there would be a ship that would be flying the flag of a certain nation. And a ship that would see that ship in the distance would approach it thinking that it was a friendly ship, a ship that they may have had a treaty with, or perhaps even a ship from their own navy, but usually a ship that they had a treaty with. So they would approach the ship in a spirit of goodwill, and then as they approached the ship, or the ship was getting close to their lane in the ocean, then all of a sudden they would drop the flag, they would put up another flag, and they would open fire on a ship that was not prepared to receive fire. So this is the whole notion of the false flag. It's donning the colors or donning the insignia of a group or country, and it's really not the insignia or the colors of their group. Another false flag, of course, was the Tea Party, when Paul Revere and Samuel Adams and all those guys dressed up like Native Americans, Indians, as they called them back then, and were dumping tea into the Boston Harbor. Clearly a false flag, because they weren't representing themselves as good old American boys, now were they? So we're looking at this coming up on November 4th, and also in alignment with that, there are some DoD drills that are going to be taking place about the grid going down. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. You really can't make this stuff up. So, you know, we've done our best to spread the word on the internet and through Facebook. And I'm spreading the word tonight because being aware, having your high beams on, is part of the process. You know, if enough people are aware, if enough people have the ability to flip their consciousness towards an event, they can actually change the outcome of the event. We talked about this on Friday, and a lot of people really got into it on Friday, and it was all about using our conscious awareness and the witness becoming a participant, and it's all based on quantum physics and Heisenberg and when a particle becomes a wave or a wave becomes a particle, all determined by the observer, who is not a part of the experiment but watching the experiment, or even the experimenter themselves. So this is what we do. This is part of the process. This is part of our yoga, and we spread the word and we make it known as far and wide as we can that these are the conditions of the times we're living in. We all have to be Paul Revere in our own way. It doesn't mean we're Chicken Little. We run around and we act like the sky is falling every single day, but without a great sense of alarm, with a hey, have you seen this? Have you noticed this? This is what's being talked about. This is what's being passed around. You share it, and through that conscious awareness, things are able to shift to some degree. Tonight, I'm going to be looking at the stars for the week ahead, as we always get into that on Sunday night. Maybe we'll do what we did last week, and if the stream is good and I'm getting some good contact with the stream, we'll do some questions and answers with the people that are following the stream. I'll tell you what we'll do next Sunday night. Hopefully it'll work out. This is one of my son's baseball Sundays coming out. But what I'd love to do, and I'll throw this out there in advance, that if you want me to look at your chart, or we used to do this all the time. We used to do this all the time over on Blog Talk Radio. But if you want me to look at your chart next Sunday night, just give it a kind of a once over, for about 5 or 6 minutes on the show. I'll be happy to do that, and you can send your coordinates, your date of birth, your time, your place, and where you were born. Just send them to me to rpm1122@zoho.com, rpm1122@zoho.com. I'll take about 3 or 4 charts, and I'll go over them next week, and maybe I'll just use a first name, and we'll do that. we'll build that into next week's show, and that way we get some more flow going back and forth between me and you and me, and make it all synergistic. All right, let's get into where we are astrologically. And like I said, we're going to be breaking down Harvey Weinstein's chart, and oh, by the way, we'll also be looking at Corey Feldman's chart. And a lot of people are looking at Corey Feldman as being somebody who has this, like he's the missing link. Like this guy has the skeleton key to Hollywood. He is the, in some ways, the male version of what Rose McGowan has become in relationship to Harvey Weinstein and sexual harassment. That Corey Feldman will blow the lid on what's happening in Hollywood with pedophilia and child abuse. I'm not sure that's the case, because if Corey Feldman wanted to do that, he would have done it already, and he wouldn't have wasted any time. Now he went out and he did a GoFundMe to do a $100,000 movie. He got $100,000 to do a documentary on what's happening in Hollywood. Why does he have to do that? Why does he need $100,000? You could hire somebody for about $5,000 and put together an amazing, really well done YouTube video, or video that you could put on Vimeo or someplace like that, where it wouldn't be taken down. So one of the side effects of Corey Feldman going out and getting this money is that Corey Haim's mother has called him a scam artist. And we'll look at that with Corey Feldman's chart tonight to see if indeed the scam artist is living inside there. By the way, today is Ivanka Trump's birthday. Maybe we'll pull up her chart and we'll look at her birthday as well tonight. Why don't I just grab this off the internet, and we'll take a peek at her. There's no birth time for her. How about that? There's no birth time. Well, why don't we pull it up anyway? Maybe we could play. We could do something along the lines of kind of a rectification, or we'll just look at where the planets are. We'll pull that up. She's a timely person. But we're going to look at Harvey Weinstein's chart, and we're going to look at Corey Feldman's chart, and I guess we'll look at Ivanka Trump. It's amazing how there's no time for her. You would think. Let me see if I can just find another source. I don't think there is one, because normally even Astro Deans would have it. Let me just type it in here. Let's just see here. Come on now. Here we go. Yeah, there's no birth time for it. Okay. So why don't we get rolling, and let's look at this week's planets and what's happening. Let me get back into the home page here. Give me 1 second. All right, here we go. So we have Sun in Scorpio. That's at 6 degrees. We're still in first decan Scorpio. And Jupiter has been sort of shadowing the Sun over the course of the last few days, roughly since last week when we first started to talk about this process. And the Sun will begin to outpace Jupiter, will move further away. So this is probably about as close as it's going to get for now. Next year, when the Sun goes into, so when Jupiter goes into Sagittarius, the Sun will catch up again. But for now, this is about as close as it's going to get in terms of the conjunction between the two. And really, it would have been, let's see, Friday would have been about as close as we would have got between the Sun-Sun conjunction. But it's still pretty palpable in terms of its resonance. And generally speaking, when there is a Sun-Sun conjunction, there's usually a pretty good feeling in the air in general. Even if there are conditions that can feel for the most part, oppressive over a longer stretch or cycle of time, the Sun-Sun conjunction can add a bit of buoyancy, faith, optimism, and kind of all around feeling good. It doesn't matter what sign it's in. You just get that Sun-Jupiter conjunction. And in the sign of Scorpio, it brings with it not only a sense of, depth and intensity, but also expansion and possibility. These are, you know, two very interesting and unique qualities. And Jupiter and Scorpio will continue to bring that forward. The only thing about Jupiter and Scorpio that can be, well, there are a couple things that I could see being a negative around it. One of the negatives around it is that there can be excess. There can be, I mean, theoretically, there can be too much because that's what Jupiter brings. With any sign, it brings too much. It was interesting with Virgo bringing too much what? Too much health, too much hypochondria. That would be Jupiter and Virgo. Jupiter and Libra, I'm not sure. It was one of the most beguiling transits of any planet I've seen with Jupiter and Libra because I really felt like we had a potential of having more chord with Jupiter and Libra, and that wasn't the case. What was the case of Jupiter and Libra was that we were seeing, or what I saw, was these points of view on both sides of the scale that wanted to be balanced out, that wanted to have some kind of reconciliation or some kind of justice or fairness that would be applied to both sides equally. That was expanded tremendously during that time. So whether it was the left or the right, they were both looking to score in some ways with Jupiter and Libra. And so what we saw was this kind of distended overreach for balance and fairness. That's about the only thing that I can see with Jupiter and Scorpio, and that same kind of expansion. Once the sun kind of moves out of the cover from Jupiter and Scorpio, then we're going to have more Scorpio kind of exposed and raw and naked, right? So it'll be interesting. Are we going to expand into kind of more areas of the dankness, the depravity? Are we going to expand into more areas of darkness and the occult and the arcane? Is that going to be part of Jupiter and Scorpio as well? How much more will be revealed through Jupiter and Scorpio when it comes to occult technology, symbolism, and all the other esoteric brands of marketing and to some degree even mind control that we'll be witness to? Interesting story that's making the rounds on the internet. Apparently, this is just a story. I can't confirm or deny any of it, all right? But apparently, Jay-Z was flying business from New York to Los Angeles. Well, first of all, I don't really think Jay-Z flies commercial airlines. And if he did, I don't think he'd fly business. He'd probably fly first class. But let's just say that's the case, or maybe business is first class on this flight. Anyway, there were people that were on this flight that apparently saw Jay-Z. We got somebody chiming in here. What is this? Hold on a second. That apparently saw Jay-Z shape-shifting. Hold on. There's one of this has to do with the live stream. I have to get feedback sometimes. Let me just see here. That they saw Jay-Z shape-shifting. I can't confirm or deny this. But it's interesting, right? Because in some ways, that would get into the Jupiter kind of Scorpio world that I was talking about with the ramifications of occult and esoteric practices, where apparently and ultimately people like Jay-Z become evacuated and these other energies or entities begin to live through them. I mean, that's really what it's all about in that world, right? So we could expect more of that with Jupiter and Scorpio. And we'll find out as the sun moves further away. Another interesting piece, correlation we might be able to make with Jupiter and Scorpio is, let's say this drill happens, and let's say they start playing with the electricity, and they start to bring grids down, and they start to do these crisis actor false flag scenarios. That could also be kind of a very eighth house or scorpionic experience. What happens if it's on Halloween? What would happen? Think about this now. What would happen if the grid went down, or portions of the grid went down during Halloween? I mean, I don't think that would be I mean, it depends on what side of the spectrum you're on, right? Like if you're on the dark side of the spectrum, having the power go down on Halloween might be right up your alley. If you're on the other side of the spectrum, it might be completely and utterly terrifying. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but as the sun moves further away from Jupiter, and that light, which has been kind of aiding Jupiter in some ways, will be further and further away. So it's just going to be Jupiter and its largesse on its own. All right, so we have Sun in Scorpio right now, 6 degrees, first decan. It's all about Scorpio right now, boys and girls. It's about going into things with depth and intensity. Jupiter's there, as we've already mentioned, expanding the journey into depth and intensity. Mercury's already been there. Mercury's now in the third decan. So we're looking at Mercury, the Cancerian decan, which is theoretically using the depth and the intensity of the mind to provide some form of nurturing, some form of healing, right? Because that's the third decan in Scorpio is Cancer. So it's actually one of the more, so when you get into the second decan of Scorpio, when it's in the Pisces decan, then we're into some pretty magical and gothic territory, because that's the second decan as it relates to Scorpio. The third decan, there tends to be, if we get into the more distilled and kind of potent version of this, that it's going into the darkness, going into the depth, and coming back with something that we can feed people with, or nurture people with, or build something with, or repair something with. The downside of that is, at times, Cancer can be an incredibly clingy sign, wants to hold on to things. So you get Scorpio combined with Cancer, and if it's the right thing to hold on to, if it's the right thing to not let go of, if it's something that you're holding on to so you can claim it, so you don't lose it, so you don't let somebody take it away from you in a way where it's clearly and truly yours, it's great. If not, then it can be slightly on the obsessive side. When you get into Scorpio, obsession is part of it. It's just the way it is. It is just the way it is. And I talk to people who have strong Scorpio aspects in their chart, and I tell them, obsession is not always a bad thing. I mean, if you think about people that are really good at something, what are they? They're obsessed about it. I remember when Anna Kournikova, was it Anna Kournikova? No, it was the other one, the other Russian tennis player who won Wimbledon. I forget her name now. But anyway, they asked her about, spending all those hours when she was young, and did she regret giving up her childhood for tennis? And she said, no, I don't at all. I won Wimbledon. Why would I regret it? So, having some level of obsession is actually not a bad thing if you want to get really good at something, if you want to achieve something. I don't think it's unhealthy at all. At some point, if it goes over the top and you become possessed and obsessed, and then it's a whole different conversation. The moon is at 1 Pisces. It will be with 1 Pisces. It's a little bit before that, because I'm looking at UT GMT time based on actually where I was born, which is in France. So by the time you get up tomorrow, the moon will be in the first degrees of Pisces. So we're starting the week off with Pisces. And unlike last week, where we started it off with Sagittarius, which was a bold energy, a leaping bold energy, the moon in Pisces on a Monday morning, that's not your get up and go energy. This is not the, hey, let's get up when before the sun rises and start our day. You know, Moon and Pisces energy on a Monday is pretty sleepy. You kind of want to stay in the cocoon of the bed. And I would not be surprised if some people actually do that. And, you know, and if I were, you know, the boss of the world tomorrow in the United States, I'd give everybody the day off tomorrow. Just stay home. Stay home, hang out, stay home with somebody that maybe you love, have a connection with, take baths together. Yeah, that's what I do. Maybe just do like a 24-hour cleanse with that Moon and Pisces on a Monday. Take your time, you know, take care of yourself, be gentle. But that's not the case now, is it? You're gonna have to get up more than likely, and if you're gonna do your thing. So the Moon in Pisces is not, like I said, the most energetic moon possible. So what you may want to do, because remember, the moon is in its waxing phase, is that you may want to incorporate some kind of Piscean activity in the morning to kind of get into that groove. So if you are a casual meditator, maybe tomorrow is one of those days where you may not want to be so casual. But you actually want to meditate, get up and let that Piscean energy take you somewhere. Maybe you could, you know, get a stretch on in the morning, do a little yoga before you go to work. It's another Piscean kind of activity. It's about finding the flow. Whatever allows you to find the flow will be a good thing. Now, with the Piscean moon, we also have a great capacity for compassion. Whereas last Monday, we were touting things like authenticity and truth and being able to be congruent with your emotional state. The Piscean moon is not really concerned with that at all. What the Piscean moon wants is it wants spiritual and emotional resonance. So it is not a competitive moon. It is not an aggressive moon. It's a moon that is much more akin to surrender, letting go, allowing the water of one's emotions, the water of one's experience to rise to its own level. And we're going to get into a moon-sun trine tomorrow, and that should be actually pretty good. It won't be a great day for being incredibly active. I would put that off for later in the week, but it will certainly be a good day to really kind of blend and vibe and connect with people at a deeper, to some degree, emotional level. And emotional in a way that it won't be saccharine, because the sun in Scorpio is not saccharine. The sun in Scorpio is not sweet. You know, if anything, it's kind of bittersweet, like wormwood. So you bring the sweetness of the Piscean moon, and you're blending it with that first decan Scorpio sun, and it's a very interesting combination. Really interesting combination. I'm going to go on record right now that tomorrow, Monday, is a prime opportunity for you to actually um, dabble in some magic. And what I mean by that is to look for opportunities where you can make somebody's day a little bit better, where maybe you can bring a certain light to somebody that they weren't expecting. You see, this is the nature of Moon and Pisces, Sun and Scorpio. We're in sort of the twilight realm, in a realm of the magic and the dispensation of will that is much more subtle in some ways. So could be a good week. This could be a good week to start that all off. You know, we do have the Venus-Mars conjunction where we talked about Mercury and Scorpio. We have Venus and Mars. They're not quite conjunct. In fact, they're pretty far off, 15 degrees, but they're both in Libra. And again, you know, these are energies that are about joining. They're about working together. They're about finding some kind of mutuality. Now, Mars in Libra, which we talked about last week, can be strident. There's a bit of stridency. We'll see that when it opposes Uranus in about 3 weeks. Actually, it's going to be about 2.5 weeks from now. When we see Mars oppose Uranus, that is where we're really going to see that strident energy kick in. So when theoretically Antifa hits the streets on the 4th, Mars will be, let's see, today is the 29th. So we got the, let's see, the 30th, 31st, and 1, 2, 3, 4, so 5 days. So Mars will be right around 8 degrees, 9 degrees, right around then. So it won't be close to Uranus, but a week and a half out from that, it'll start to oppose Uranus. And that's when things could get kind of hot. That's when things could get kind of hot. I'm thinking roughly about the week before Thanksgiving, as we go into the final degrees of Scorpio. I think that's the period of time you want to look at in terms of the volume getting turned up in the social arena. But for now, Venus is in Libra. It's great for bonding, mutuality, Mars behind it. And we have Jupiter also in Scorpio, which we talked about, excuse me. So the moon will also be in trine with Jupiter as well. Boy, tomorrow could be really magical. If you can get yourself out of bed, manage to pull the covers back and actually go somewhere and do something. I mean, that's not to say you can't have a magical time in bed, but tomorrow, if you can motivate, get out of bed, it can be very interesting. There's a lot of possibility tomorrow with subtle magic. Keep that in mind. Of course, now Saturn is in Sagittarius, and it's kind of moving along. It is at 24 degrees. We've only got 6 more degrees before transits out of Sagittarius, and we won't see it again for another 30 years. So this is it. This is where we get, those final degrees of truth, as they say. And it tends to be right now pretty, how do I say this? I would say it's a common commodity, but it is a commodity that is being passed along in the marketplace. Now, as people come forward, mostly women, occasionally a man or two, and they are revealing what's gone on in their past. I'll talk about some of this as it relates to Harvey Weinstein and some of the revelations. But this is what we're seeing now. It's sort of like the last train, the last stop, last gas for truth. And it's happening now. We're going to get one more big phase here where Mercury goes retrograde in the beginning of December in Sagittarius. That'll be very interesting. You won't know who to believe during that time. It'll be he said, she said, they said, we said, and trying to get to the core of something that's truthful, valid, and real during that time will be very interesting. Maybe some of the stuff with the Kennedy files might come out during a Mercury retrograde. Let's hope that Trump is following his astrologer's advice and holding some of the files back until Mercury goes retrograde in Sagittarius. Because at that time, they would be really potent. Whatever's in there, I mean, it could be even minor material, but it could resonate and blow up into something much larger. Uranus is in Aries, 26 degrees. It's going retrograde. But remember, next year in May, it does go into Taurus. Uranus does go into Taurus for most of the year, and then it goes back the following year into Aries for about 3 months. And then it comes back again one more time into Taurus, and that's where it'll be for the rest of its 7-year stay. So a lot of the stuff that we've been seeing with athletes and a lot of the Weinstein stuff too. A lot of the material that's connected to men is a byproduct in some ways of this Uranus retrograde. Because again, this is like going back in time, and these guys, whether you like them or not, whether you resonate with them or not, they're men, and Aries represents men. So these are shocking revelations that are coming back out of the past, Uranus retrograde in Aries. Excuse me. So that's been part of this, part of what's been happening. And it should, when we get to that Mars opposition, like I said, about 2.5 weeks with Uranus, that'll be bracing, to say the least. Let's see what else we have. Neptune is in Pisces, also retrograde. So probably later tomorrow, late tomorrow night. Late tomorrow night, we'll probably see the moon begin to get into a close conjunction with Neptune. Well, that'll be real interesting because it'll all still be sort of in orb with the sun and to some degree Jupiter. So there's going to be Halloween night. Halloween night will be a pretty thin veil night. Let's put it that way, because we'll have that Jupiter trying to Neptune get even closer 2 nights out from now. So those veils will be pretty thin on Halloween. Pluto is in Capricorn, of course, 17 degrees, steady and holding, and true node at 21 Leo, and it's an interesting. This true node transit through Leo has been fascinating in a lot of ways. I mean, we've gotten into some of the children's stuff, which is what I said would happen, and we're not even done yet. And that's the revelation of what happens with our children in Leo. And of course, the spotlight is on athletes. Athletes are performers; they're entertainers, just like actors in some ways. Their stage is different. It's in a hall or a stadium on a playing field somewhere. So we're getting a lot of light and glare on our performers, people who play in our pastimes. Our pastimes are coming front and center, whether you like them or not, whether you watch them or not. They are in our window of perspective. Chiron is at 24 degrees, and that is retrograde. We're going to talk about Chiron when it comes to Weinstein and his chart, because it plays a huge role in his chart. Okay, I'm not going to go too long tonight because I've had a pretty long weekend, and I want to see if I can rest up with this Pisces moon. But I want to get into some charts tonight. And the first chart that I wanted to bring up is Harvey Weinstein's chart. So let's do this. Let me add a picture of dear Harvey. What do we got here? Here we go. Let's do this one. Here he is. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Okay. Wow. Now, if this guy, if Harvey Weinstein was not a super powerful Hollywood producer who is loaded with cash and makes things happen, do you think these women would have a whole lot to do with Harvey Weinstein? I mean, maybe he's got such a natural charisma that they wouldn't be able to resist him. Now, he does have Mars and Scorpio in his chart, so we'll give him that. But I think we can basically agree on that what he brought to the table, more than anything, was power, influence, and control. So let me see if I can bring up his chart here, and I'll just get into some of it, and I'll show you what I'm exploring on my site. Hold on a second. Show what I'm exploring on my site. Let's see, as it relates to. This is probably it. As it relates to Weinstein. Okay, here we go. So this is really not his chart. I mean, what I mean by this is that this is where his planets are in terms of their house, in terms of their signs. But it is not does not contain his ascendant, because we don't know his birth time. But it's about as good as I can get it for now. So what we know about, let me see if I can get this here. Give me 1 second. Okay, so what we okay, let's try to bring up Uranus here. No. All right. So what we can see about Weinstein's chart that is interesting is that, first of all, he is a 29-degree Pisces sun. Okay. Now, transiting Chiron is right on the outer fringe of his sun at 25 degrees, which means that he's going to have a crisis of the personality. Now, the personality in this case is not the ascendant, but it's who he is. So he's going to go through a significant crisis. And right on time. It's right on time with Chiron approaching the sun. And it's not quite there yet. It's still at 25 degrees. Now, what's interesting is that you can see he's got these planets that are in Aries. He's got Mercury in Aries. He has Jupiter in Aries. And they're opposing Saturn and Neptune. And those are all about relationship, right? Saturn is relationship karma. That there is a price to pay at some point with Saturn in Libra. It also indicates that if the person can abide by the rules of Saturn, there can be tremendous reward, which means that there would be some degree of faithfulness, some degree of honoring contracts, one-on-one, whether it's partnership or marriage. Saturn in Libra, if it's approached and if it's dealt with within the boundaries of Saturn, it can be quite beneficial because, number one, it's exalted in Libra, it's accidentally exalted in its own house. But as we see with Neptune in wide opposition to Saturn, right here you see the pitchfork there, it's actually the trident. That's not always the case. It's not always the case with the Neptune-Saturn conjunction. Now, there can be a greater degree of kindness, believe it or not, when you get into a Neptune-Saturn conjunction in the 7th house. But what I think what we're looking at here at this point with this Neptune-Saturn conjunction in the 7th is that he's going to want some kind of forgiveness for his ongoing conflict between Mercury-Jupiter, Mercury at 17, and Jupiter at, Mercury at 22, and Jupiter at 24, opposing both Neptune and Saturn in terms of its more of a wider opposition with Saturn. So these two energies are in conflict because Aries wants to do whatever it wants to do. So his mind says, I want to do what I want to do. I want to move. I want to do this. I want to experience this. Jupiter expands upon that. Just we've been talking about Jupiter in its relationship with the sun. It expands the mind. And so in Aries, it's the mind that wants what it wants. It wants to actualize. It wants to experience. There is no downtime at all with Mercury and Aries and Jupiter conjunct Aries. But there's always a sense of negotiating with the other side, which is this kind of Libran commitment to being honest and fair. This is a chart in many ways that's quite tortured as it relates to this opposition. But what I'm really interested in is this 29-degree sun. This 29-degree sun. Oh, I'm sorry, 20. His Jupiter is 20 and his Mercury is 17. We've got these little areas that are highlighted that are throwing me off a little bit. But his 29-degree sun in Pisces is fascinating because that is the last degree of the zodiac. That is the final degree of the zodiac. So theoretically, in terms of his evolution, this guy's almost done, right? That's what it represents. It represents kind of this culmination and a fulfillment. But we talked about the anaretic degree last week, and this is a difficult degree, especially when he's got Mercury and Jupiter over here in Aries. Now keep in mind, this is not his chart as it relates to his ascendant at time of birth. This is just where the planets are in terms of the signs, but you can move this around anywhere, and it's always going to be Mercury and Jupiter out front, and then the Sun and Pisces behind. So he has this great desire to actualize, this great desire to manifest, this great desire to do whatever the hell he wants in Aries. Often at the expense, in terms of Neptune and Saturn opposing it from the opposite side of the chart. He also has a square with Uranus in his chart, with both Mercury and Jupiter. So this is not a patient person at all, in the least. He also has a Mars-Pluto square, which we'll get into. But the pull for him to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, how he wants it, and to be demanding and commanding is the signature of Aries inside of his chart. And with the 29-degree Piscean sun, he would give himself over to that, but he would be losing what? He would be losing the lesson of the 29th-degree sun, which is sacrifice. This is what the 29th degree of Pisces is. If you go into the Sabian symbols, you'll see that it's all about dispersion and the fractal release of light, okay? But it also has to do with the fractal release of the personality. And I'm going to go on record here and say that this, what Harvey Weinstein is experiencing, is a tremendous spiritual lesson. But he will not recognize it as such, because he's been so inured by getting what he wants with the Mercury-Jupiter conjunction that unless he is completely brought to his knees, and he's not even close to that yet, wait till Chiron conjuncts his sun. That'll be very interesting. That'll be in the first part of April of next year, when Chiron conjuncts his sun. Then we might see a different Harvey Weinstein at that time. But instead, what is he doing? He's hiring lawyers. He's going after his old company. Apparently, he tried to pay Rose McGowan $1 million to, not say anything. I can't verify that, but he's not going about this the right way, and he's being used as a sacrifice, because this is what happens with Pisces. It is the scapegoat. And he is being the scapegoat for Hollywood at present. And yeah, of course, Adam Sandler patted somebody in the knee. Oh boy. George Bush whispered something a little salacious. George H.W. Bush. And we all know, well, we don't all know. I mean, there are some of us who have delved into the Kathy O'Brien material. And with Kathy O'Brien, what did we see with Kathy O'Brien? That she was traumatized by George Bush and Dick Cheney. Her and her daughter was part of their mind control, their ongoing mind control programming, that they were terrorized by Bush and Cheney, that they were part of the most dangerous game. And what does Bush do? Well, he has to admit to saying something a little salty in somebody's ear. That's people. That's revelation of the method. That's where they give you something that looks like it's the truth, but you're not really getting the truth. What you're getting is you're getting a small piece of the illusion. That's what you're getting. You're getting a small piece of the illusion, because the greater illusion, the greater lie, the deeper sin lies beneath that. So this is what's happening with Weinstein. He's being made a scapegoat by his community, his fellow power brokers, not just in Hollywood, but other people that are associated with his, how shall we say, tribal influence. It is rare when they being the Jewish community, turn on somebody inside the Jewish community. It's very, very rare. It's extremely rare. It happened with Bernie Madoff, but you really don't see it. You may find them bad-mouthing one another every now and then, or talking shit about somebody, but rarely does that kind of
in-house fighting go on for the public's consumption. And it's clear that Weinstein is being sacrificed. Now, it may all just go away. He may just pay people off. And he may wind up hanging out with Roman Polanski in Paris until the two of them die of old age. Although I think that that might be difficult for Weinstein because he's got that Chiron conjunction with the sun. And his best, this is, if he has any kind, which is doubtful at this point, spiritual spark in his life, he would see that this is probably one of the most important moments of his life. And not because he's losing things. It's not because things are being taken from him. It has to do with the fact that he could actually find something, like maybe his soul, by really getting into some level of repentance. But we won't see it for a while. That's the 29th degree of Pisces. He's here to be obliterated in a lot of ways and to be diffused amongst the stars, so to speak. Now, he also has this Mars in Scorpio. It's very powerful, right? Mars in Scorpio, and it squares Pluto. This is a guy you do not want to cross. This is a dude you do not want to cross with a Mars-Pluto square. Trust me on this. He's got Black Moon Lilith. Do you see that? He's got Black Moon Lilith in Leo. I did not write about this, but I just noticed this now. The true node was probably right on his Black Moon Lilith when this went down on October 13th. If not, I bet you it was around 25 Leo. I'll bet it was 26 Leo when it all happened. So this is the exposure of his relationship with the dark moon, or the dark side of his relating with women. Now, look, there are plenty of pictures on the internet where the women who have accused Harvey Weinstein of doing terrible things to them are draped all over him, smiling, making themselves available to him on some level. So we have to take, look, I'm not into blaming the victims. I don't want to get into that. But these are women who, unless they were involved in some kind of mind control programming from when they were quite young and have absolutely zero will, and maybe there's a few cases of that with Weinstein, that some of these women, or a number of these women, actually made volitional choices. They made volitional choices to continue to be employed by Weinstein on some level and not say something. I get the not saying anything, because you can be completely blown out of Hollywood and making a living, and you could suffer a huge amount of scorn. I totally get that. You see that with the conservatives in Hollywood. But again, at some level, there is a power exchange that's going on here. Total power exchange. Well, you didn't want to mess with Weinstein. This is a chart that's conflicted. The only trines that he has in the chart are between Uranus and his true node and Venus, which is an indication of unusual relationships. It's unusual connections, not your average kind of one-on-one relating. This would be very hard for this guy to be in a monogamous relationship. Just look at where Neptune and Saturn are. Again, Saturn's not in the 7th house. I apologize for saying it earlier. But Saturn's in Libra. So this would be very difficult to balance out the need for some kind of structured relationship and the demands of the ego and the will with the Jupiter-Mercury conjunction. And he has this Moon-Uranus opposition going on in his chart as well, with the Moon in Capricorn. And to me, that's like marrying somebody who is professional, looks good, and kind of matches the profile. But this is a guy that I would say is very cold emotionally, with Moon in Capricorn opposing Uranus. So he's going to be going through his chirotic crisis here when it hits his sun, or a chirotic crisis when it hits his sun. And if he has absolutely any ability to navigate through it. He'll have to let go and surrender. He'll just let it all go. This is an important. This could be the most important moment of his life. Just to let it all go. Would surrender it, every single bit of it. His money, his fame, his fortune. It's not an easy thing to do. It's the ultimate sacrifice in a lot of ways. And he is being sacrificed, by the way. I don't have, it's not like I have sympathy for Harvey Weinstein. I really don't. But he's being set up with that 29th degree sun as being a sacrifice. And also, what's interesting, and I get into this on my website, is I talk about the two Harveys, Hurricane Harvey and Hurricane Harvey. But the one in Houston, and what we saw with Harvey in Houston is we saw images of men who were like being men again. And that's what they were doing. They were helping people out. They were holding people. They were hugging each other. I mean, this was a community of men brought together through the dire straits of emergency. And this is what men do well. Right? This is what we're there to step in. This is part of our DNA. We care for those that are less fortunate than ourselves, or care for those people in crisis. I mean, theoretically, male or female, this is what our elected officials are supposed to be doing. They don't. Anyway, we had a lot of really wonderful imagery around this. And then about a month later, we have Harvey Weinstein, then every man is a scumbag again. So this is very fascinating to watch in terms of the depiction of male energy, especially as it relates to Chiron and Aries, which is coming in April. This is almost like a preemptive strike in some ways, because I've been talking about how this is going to be a very important time for men with Chiron and Aries coming up. And we have now even more baggage to deal with, theoretically, as it relates to the whole Weinstein affair. So go to my website if you want to read more. I don't want to give it all away because there's a lot in there. And I spent most of the day working on it. So go to my website, check out the piece on the deconstruction of Weinstein's chart. Or let's get him out of here. There we go. Avi. Do you really want to mess with that guy? I wouldn't want to mess with that dude. I can understand why these women didn't come forward. Whoops, what is this? Let me see if we get him out of here. Hold on, let's do this. It's not going to work. Let's try this. There, here we go. Here I am. Okay. Let's do another chart. Let's do Corey Feldman. Somebody asked me, will I do his chart? I'm going to actually do another larger piece on Corey Feldman here coming up on the website. So let's bring him onto the holodeck, shall we? There he is. The savior. The guy's going to come in and tear Hollywood down with his $100,000 film, his documentary that he's going to put together on pedophilia. I'll believe that when I see it. All right, here we go. Let's bring this up. We'll do another image here, and we'll bring on, put his chart. Now this chart, we actually have the time for this chart. So let's see if we can do this here. I think this is it. Yeah. Okay. So here's his chart. He's a Leo rising, so we know he likes attention. Look at the hair. That's the Leo rising mane. And he has a moon in Taurus, and it's 1 degree off of his ascendant. So I'll tell you what, people that have moon on the ascendant, doesn't matter what sign it's in, they have amazing memories. That would go, by the way, that would include Harvey Weinstein, who has moon up there. Well, we don't know because that was the, but he has moon on the midheaven. He has moon on the midheaven, so he has a memory. This guy knows. He has total recall of everything that's happened to him. Everything that's happened to him. Keep that in mind. Okay, that's the nature of the moon conjunct the midheaven. Now, if we go over to the other side of his chart, where you see the ascendant in Leo, you'll see Mercury in Leo, and it's just right there at the cusp of the 12th house, near the first house. So what do we know about Mercury in that position? It wants to come out. It wants to say something. It wants to bring some kind of thought or articulation to the individual and to the world around him. Is that going to happen? It is very difficult for Mercury to actually voice itself here. It has to cross over that threshold. You have somebody with Mercury in the first house, all they do is talk. All they do is talk. Now, Feldman talks, obviously, but is he really saying anything? He was on the View, and he stirred some things up in the View, and he said that, yeah, there's a lot of pedophilia going on in the industry. Now, you've got to be careful with Corey Feldman, though. You have to be very careful with him because he has an addictive side to him. And that's down here with Jupiter in conjunction with Neptune. Now his Jupiter is right there. It looks like it's at 28 degrees, 26 degrees. It's right at 26. And his Neptune is at 0 degrees Sagittarius. And his Jupiter is in square with Mars. He's a Jupiter-Mars square. He has Mars in Aquarius, and he has the true node in Aquarius in the 7th house. So kind of as a result of this, he also has this, with the conjunction between Jupiter and Neptune, which is out of sign, he has a square with Mars. Also, in relationship to Neptune, I don't think Corey Feldman can be trusted. I don't think he can be trusted at all. And that's right down there in his 4th house. Jupiter's at the kind of the edge of the 4th house. Neptune on the cusp of the 5th. And there's, I don't know. I don't get a sense. And maybe he will be able to rise to the occasion. You know, maybe it's when the true node crosses his ascendant. And the true node crosses his Mercury, which will be after the first of the year. So we're talking about January, roughly January. Maybe he'll come forward with something. But Corey Feldman, if you watched the two Coreys on, was it MTV or VH1? They had a series with him and Corey Haim. And this was shortly before Corey Haim died. And I watched some of that series when it was on, and it was, I don't know if those episodes are still available, but if they are, you'll see a very different side of Corey Feldman. You know, there's a side of Corey Feldman that is cruel, and that's that Mars in Aquarius, in the true node Aquarius, squaring off against Jupiter, Neptune, and opposing his Mercury and opposing his ascendants. And I think the cruelty is triggered for him in relationship because during the show, Corey Feldman got married to this woman. I don't know if they're still together, but she appeared to be almost like his handler in some ways. And he and his I forget her name, his wife, they were not particularly nice to Corey Haim. And Corey Haim was really trying to get cleaned up. He was doing everything in his power to get his life together. to break free from the subjugation, the chains and the bondage of the conditioning, the drugs. I believe Corey Haim was a Pisces, if I'm not mistaken. But we'll check on that in a second. But he was trying his best to get free. And Corey Feldman was doing everything in his power to fuck with him during that show. Now, it might be because he himself has been part of this brutal chain of abuse. And when you get into it, it's not just, hey, physical abuse. There is psychological abuse. There's emotional abuse. It happens across the board. It's not just one level, one layer. So it was disturbing to watch him during that series. I quite frankly, didn't like him at all. Now, he's got that part of fortune in Gemini. He's got Saturn in Gemini. So he has some real estate in being dual, right? And his lesson in this lifetime is to somehow come into a more defined structure around what it is to be dual. And he's got that opposition with Neptune, with his Saturn, which is not trustworthy at all. He bounces back and forth between wanting to be somebody who is a truth teller, that would be Sagittarius, but it's not well grounded. It's just not well grounded in Neptune. And then, of course, Saturn is the forces in many ways of the industry, which are right up there in his 10th house for the 11th house, that he has to deal with. So there's this one, I think it's one of the final episodes of the two Corys, or Corey and Corey, whatever they call the show. I think it's the two Corys. And Corey Haim is trying to get clean here. And as he's doing his best, living in some really just kind of okay apartment in LA, he's paid a visit by Corey Feldman, Corey Feldman's wife, Todd Bridges, and Pauly Shore. And they are there to gaslight him. When I do this piece on Corey Feldman tomorrow, I'm going to insert this video, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. They're there to gaslight him, and the treatment that they have for Corey Haim is deplorable. Now, Todd Bridges, to his credit, kind of, you can see he's trying to figure out what he's doing there. They were sent there. Those three were sent there. They just didn't say, hey, let's go over and check on our buddy, Corey Haim. They didn't do that. Wasn't happening at all. They were sent there to screw with him. And you can see Todd Bridges was kind of going along with the program, but he was not nearly as engaged with messing with Corey Haim as Corey Feldman's wife, and Pauly Shore, of all people. So I'm going to get into a more detailed analysis of his chart on my website. But I don't think he can be trusted. Not with that square, that Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. It's like he offers up a lot, but there's not a lot of there's not a lot of, how should we say, grounding here in some ways. He's got that Sun-Venus conjunction in Cancer, the 11th house, and there's some interesting things going on. He's got the sextile to the moon, so he has some degree of plausibility, believability with that Sun Moon sextile, so he can be to some degree genuine. That his emotions can be grounded. That Cancerian Sun can appear to be caring. I'm not saying that he isn't, but what I saw on the two Corys left me really trying to understand who this guy is. And I don't think he is what everybody would like him to be as the liberator of Hollywood. and the guy who's going to free the sex slaves from their relationship with the dungeons of Hollywood and their power brokers. I don't think that's going to happen. I'd be very surprised. Very surprised. If anything, there's a level of duplicity here, especially in the chart. So we'll see what happens. If he really wanted to come forward, he would have done it. He would have done it by now. He would have written a tell-all book, but he didn't. Why? Because it was Mercury. It's right there. It's right at the edge of the 12th house, but not quite on the ascendant. If it was on the ascendant, or on the other side of the ascendant, it'd be a lot easier for him to speak his truth. We'll see what happens. All right, I think that's going to do it for tonight for the live stream, because I want to get up tomorrow and give you guys a good 15 minutes of flame. And then I have one of my everything readings. You know, the everything readings have been really great. I put out a call. I told people it's one of my favorite readings. And people loved it. They said, yeah, we're into it. So I did my first one of the cycle last week. I've got another one tomorrow. And I try to do really about one of these per day, because they're 2-hour readings, 2-hour plus. I usually get into it, and they're intense. So I try not to, maybe I'll do another kind of just regular session, client session, 60-minute session. But I can't do two of these everythings in a day. It takes too much out of me. Some spacing them out, but the response was great. It was really, really great, and I still have the discounted price for $237, which is on the website. I'm going to take it down tomorrow, probably tomorrow afternoon. So as long as that price is still there, and you want to sign up for the everything reading, go for it. Probably around 1 o'clock or so tomorrow, the price will get swapped out. It goes back to the original price. I just haven't taken it down. It's still there, so if you still want one, go ahead, go for it. The webinar in Capricorn was moved to December. I believe it's the 8th, and because there were some scheduling conflicts coming up around that with Astrological, and they wanted to get more people, in that chat or in that webinar, and it just wasn't going to work out in terms of space and schedule, so we had to reschedule that. All right, so let me get out of here with Corey Feldman. I want to take his image out of here. I think we're going to skip Ivanka Trump tonight. Let me just check in with people in the chat, see how everything is going. Let me see, got good stream health. What's going on in the chat? Plays without giving it. So yeah, okay. Let me just go into the chat here before I. So there's Suzanne. Hi Suzanne. Good evening. Okay, there's Suze. There's Judy. Yep, you better watch your mouth. Evening all. Hello everyone. Good evening. Hi Corey. Hi Christine. Thank you for your child. These live shows is fine. In my opinion, you should dump Spreaker. The audio is horrible. You probably are losing listeners. Listen to one of those shows from. Yes, please, thank you very much. With a computer or phone, I'm really not a total asshole. Promotive, I love you. I do the best I can. The sound is good for me, but I'm using Bluetooth. The sound's fine now on live show, the other shows. The sound just changed, right? Yeah, dropped really low. Yeah, sound seemed decreased. Oh my God, I think the mic is simply obstructed. Yeah, weak audio. So no, okay. A lot going on in the sound. Okay, sometimes it's tickling. Okay, a lot going on. There's Joe. Hey Joe, what's going on? Yeah, the mic tonight. I'm in a remote area, boys and girls. I'm definitely in a remote area. So some of it has to do with my normal equipment not being here. Something going on with the auto, but I don't think Robert aware. Okay, that's what I've heard. Sacrifice. What else do we have here? Okay, yes, better, thank you. Corey Haim was cute, but Corey Feldman kind of ugly. I wonder if he was really molested. He was. Yeah, Corey Feldman was molested, but he's also a gatekeeper as well. I don't think Feldman was Haim's handler. I don't think so. I think he tried to be. Yeah. Sorry about the volume. Yeah. Okay. We'll get back on track next week, and we'll have the regular equipment up and running. So night all. No, plug. How about now? Is this good now? Are we happening now? Are we happening now? Yes, you were great when you started. Oh, thank you. Thanks. Have a good night. I don't know what happened to the volume. I apologize.